The night my wife decided I was no longer worth carrying, I was lying in a hospital bed with 14 screws in my left leg and a plastic cup of ice chips melting beside my hand. The room smelled like antiseptic, rainwater, and that strange recycled air every hospital in America seems to breathe for you. A heart monitor blinked green numbers in the dark. Somewhere down the hall, a nurse laughed softly at something behind the desk, and for 1 second, that ordinary sound made me believe the world was still ordinary too. Then Ashley walked in wearing the beige coat I bought her for our anniversary, her hair tucked neatly behind one ear, her wedding ring still on her finger but already gone from her heart. I remember thinking she looked too composed for a woman whose husband had been pulled from under a collapsed steel frame less than 48 hours earlier. No swollen eyes, no trembling hands, no desperate rush to my bedside. Just that careful, polished face she used when a dinner reservation was wrong or a cashier took too long. She stood near the foot of my bed, not close enough for me to reach her, and looked at the metal brace holding my leg like it was a bill she had not agreed to pay. I tried to smile because men like me are trained to make everyone else comfortable, even when our own bones feel like broken glass under the skin. I said, "Hey, Ash." My voice came out dry, smaller than I wanted. She didn't answer right away. She glanced at the machines, the tubes, the folded blanket over my waist, and then at the rain crawling down the window behind me. For a moment, I thought she was fighting back tears. I thought she was choosing the right words. I thought she might say, "We'll get through this." Instead, she opened her purse and pulled out a white envelope. She placed it on the rolling tray beside my untouched Jell-O, careful not to look at my face when she did it. The envelope landed softly, but it sounded final. I stared at it, then back at her. "What is that?" I asked, even though some part of me already knew. Ashley folded her arms across her chest, the way people do when they want to look strong while doing something cruel. "Divorce papers," she said. The heart monitor kept beeping. Steady, mechanical, more loyal than she was. I didn't move. I couldn't move much anyway. My left leg was strapped in place. My ribs ached when I breathed, and my right hand still had bruises from where the 4 had been moved twice. But the part of me that froze had nothing to do with the accident. "Ashley," I said quietly, "I almost died." She looked at me then, and there was no hatred in her eyes. That would have been easier. Hatred means there is still heat somewhere. What I saw was worse. Inconvenience. She exhaled like I had asked too much of her. "I know what happened, Michael, but I have to think about my future. My future, not our future, not our marriage, not the vows we made in a small church outside Dayton while her mother cried and my father slipped me a 20 for luck. Just her future, cleanly cut away from the wreckage of mine." I swallowed, and my throat felt lined with dust. "So this is it." She shifted her weight, heels clicking once against the hospital floor. "I didn't marry a burden." The words did not come loud. They came calm, and that made them worse. Calm words have time to sink. Calm words know exactly where to land. I looked at the envelope again. The corner was tucked under the plastic cup, already damp from condensation. My marriage, getting wet beside lime Jell-O and a nurse's call button. I said nothing. Ashley kept going, maybe because silence makes guilty people nervous. "The doctors don't even know when you'll walk normally again. You might not go back to the field. The medical bills are going to be insane. Physical therapy, home modifications, months of appointments. Maybe years. I can't become your caretaker, Michael. I can't let my life shrink down to pill bottles and insurance forms." Outside, thunder rolled over Columbus like a heavy truck crossing an old bridge. I watched her mouth move and remembered that same mouth once whispering that I made her feel safe. I used to think that meant loved. I was learning the difference. "Say it," I told her. My voice was barely above the monitor. "Say what you mean." Ashley's jaw tightened. For the first time, the mask cracked. Not with sadness, but irritation. "Fine," she said. "You're deadweight now." The room changed after that. Not visibly. The fluorescent light still hummed. The rain still tapped the glass. The monitor still counted the beats my body had fought to keep. But something in me went silent in a way no machine could measure. Deadweight. One word for 12 years of marriage. One word for every mortgage payment I covered, every tire I changed in the snow, every late night I spent fixing the porch because she wanted the house to look nice for her friends. One word for the man who had pushed a 23-year-old apprentice out of the way when that beam came loose, because I saw the kid's face and thought of his mother getting a phone call. The newspapers would call me brave the next morning. My wife called me Deadweight before the ink was dry. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't throw the envelope, even though my hand twitched toward it. Pain teaches you what movement costs. Betrayal teaches you what stillness is worth. I looked at Ashley's ring one last time, the small diamond catching hospital light like nothing had happened. Then I looked at her face and saw the woman I had built a life around already walking away from the ruins. Okay, I said. That was all. One word. Small. Clean. Final. She blinked, like she expected a performance. Anger. Pleading. A promise that I would heal faster, earn more, need less. But I had nothing left to audition for. She picked up her purse, smoothed the front of her coat, and moved toward the door. Before she stepped into the hallway, she paused without turning around. I'll have my attorney contact you. The door opened. Hospital noise spilled in. The door closed. And there I was, 39 years old, 6'1" on paper, helpless under a thin blanket, listening to the rain and the steady beep of a heart that had not gotten the message yet. My body had survived the accident. My marriage had not. But lying there in that blue-white room, with divorce papers beside my bed and the word deadweight burning hotter than any fracture, I made myself one promise. If I ever stood again, I would never stand where she left me. The morning after Ashley left the envelope beside my hospital bed, sunlight came through the blinds in thin white stripes and made the room look cleaner than it felt. Nurses moved in and out with soft shoes and careful voices. They checked numbers, changed bags, asked about my pain on a scale from 1 to 10, as if betrayal had a number. I told them 6 because men like me always subtract. The truth was my leg felt like it belonged to someone else. My ribs complained every time I breathed, and my mind kept replaying one word until it lost shape and became only sound. Deadweight. It sat on my chest heavier than the brace bolted around my left leg. Around 8 in the morning, Dr. Harris came in with a tablet tucked under his arm, and that professional expression doctors use when they have decided honesty needs padding. He explained the injuries again, slower this time, because yesterday I had been floating in medication and shock. Fractured femur, torn ligaments, nerve irritation, months of physical therapy, maybe a year before I could climb scaffolding or walk uneven ground without help. No promises about returning to field supervision. No guarantees my body would ever feel like the old one. I nodded while he spoke, staring at the coffee stain on his sleeve because it was easier than looking at the future. You were lucky, he said. People kept saying that. Lucky. Lucky to be alive. Lucky the beam missed my spine. Lucky the young apprentice went home to his family that night. And they were right, in the way facts can be right and still fail to touch the wound that matters. I was alive, but the life waiting for me outside that hospital room had already changed locks. Dr. Harris asked if my wife would be helping with care at home. The question hung there, ordinary and unbearable. I looked at the white envelope still sitting on the tray. Someone had moved the melted ice chips, but left the papers. Even the cleaning staff knew not to touch a wreck when they saw one. No, I said. She will not. He paused for half a second, just long enough to understand more than I had said. Then he adjusted his glasses and began talking about discharge options, rehabilitation facilities, home health support, insurance approvals. His words stacked up like bills on a kitchen counter. I heard every one of them and none of them. A man can survive a falling beam, but paperwork will remind him exactly how fragile survival is. After he left, I reached for my phone. My hands were stiff, my thumb clumsy against the screen. There were messages from Daniel Brooks, my old friend from the construction firm, asking if I was awake, asking what I needed, telling me not to be stubborn. There was one from my father in Florida, short and awkward because love had never been easy for him to spell out. Proud of you, son. Call when you can. There was nothing from Ashley. Not one message after the papers. Not even a lie dressed as concern. Around noon, a local news clip played on the television mounted in the corner. I had not turned it on. The nurse had, probably trying to give the room some noise. The reporter stood outside the job site in a blue coat, wind pushing her hair across her cheek, talking about a construction accident in downtown Columbus and the site's supervisor who moved a young worker away from a failing support section before emergency crews arrived. My name appeared at the bottom of the screen. Michael Turner, 39, injured while preventing further harm. They showed a photo from the company website, me in a hard hat, smiling like a man who believed tomorrow would be shaped by effort. I almost did not recognize him. That man had 2 steady legs, a wife who still posed beside him at company barbecues, and a future measured in promotions instead of pain medication. The nurse glanced at the screen and said, "You are a hero." I wanted to laugh, but my ribs would not allow it. Hero is a word people use when they do not have to live inside the aftermath. A hero gets applause. A husband gets measured for usefulness. That afternoon, the first physical therapist came by. Her name was Grace Bennett, though she told me to call her Dr. Bennett until I earned the right to complain properly. She was in her early 40s, calm eyes, no-nonsense voice, white coat over navy scrubs, the kind of person who looked at pain like it was a locked door, not a wall. She explained that we would start small, sitting up, standing with support, learning what my body could do now instead of mourning what it did before. I told her I was not ready. She looked at the envelope, then back at me, and somehow did not ask. "Ready is overrated," she said. "We start with breathing." So I breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The first victory was not standing. It was not breaking while someone watched. Later that evening, Daniel walked in carrying a paper bag from a diner and the uncomfortable anger of a friend trying not to make things worse. He was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with sawdust still caught in the cuff of his jacket like he had come straight from a job site. He looked at the brace, the machines, the papers on the tray, and his jaw tightened. "She really did it here?" he asked. I did not answer. I did not need to. He set the bag down and dragged the visitor chair closer. For a while, neither of us spoke. The room hummed. The city moved outside the glass. My whole life had narrowed to a bed, a brace, a tray, and the space where my wife used to stand. Daniel finally leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Listen to me, Mike. You are not done." I looked at my leg, swollen under layers of medical equipment and white sheets. "You do not know that." His voice dropped. "No, but I know you." That should have helped. Instead, it hurt. Because Ashley knew me too. Or she had known the version that lifted boxes, paid mortgages, fixed leaks, drove through snow, and never asked to be carried. Maybe that was the only version she ever wanted. That night, after Daniel left and the hallway lights dimmed, I opened the envelope for the first time. The papers smelled like toner and rain. Her signature was already there, neat and confident. The loop in the A as perfect as it had been on birthday cards and mortgage forms. I read the legal language slowly. Irreconcilable differences, division of assets, medical liabilities, separate futures written in clean black ink. Near the back, tucked inside by mistake or cruelty, was a printed email between Ashley and her attorney. One sentence had been underlined. Given Michael's current condition, I do not want to be financially tied to Deadweight. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Then I folded the paper carefully, not because it deserved care, but because evidence does. I opened my laptop with shaking hands, created a folder, and named it Deadweight. I saved a photo of the email inside. Not to punish her. Not yet. I saved it because some words are too heavy to carry alone, and one day, I wanted proof of the exact weight I had learned to rise under. Before the accident, I used to believe marriage was built the same way a good house was built. Start with a foundation. Check the frame. Keep the roof sealed. Fix small cracks before weather gets inside. It sounded simple because I was a simple man in the ways that mattered. I woke up early, worked hard, paid what I owed, and came home with enough energy left to ask Ashley how her day had been. Our first place was a 2-bedroom rental on the edge of Dayton, with thin walls, a stove that leaned slightly to the left, and a heater that clicked like an old pocket watch every winter night. We did not have much then. A second-hand couch, a card table for dinners, 2 coffee mugs from a gas station because the moving boxes were still half-packed. But I remember Ashley sitting cross-legged on the floor, eating pepperoni pizza from a paper plate, laughing when I told her one day I would build her a kitchen big enough for every appliance she saved on Pinterest. She leaned against my shoulder and said, "As long as it is ours." I carried that sentence for years like a blueprint. Ours. That word made overtime easier. It made cold mornings on job sites feel purposeful. It made every blister and every missed weekend seem like part of something larger than my own tired body. When Ashley finished beauty school and wanted to work at a high-end salon in Columbus, I said yes before she finished explaining. We moved north with 2 suitcases, a mattress strapped to the back of my truck, and more hope than savings. I took any project that would have me. Parking structures, office renovations, Retail shelves off Interstate 71. I learned concrete schedules, crane permits, safety inspections, and how to keep calm when a subcontractor called at 5 in the morning saying a delivery was missing. Ashley learned color, style, clients, and charm. She could make people feel seen when she wanted to. That was her gift. I watched her build a book of clients one appointment at a time, and I was proud of her in a way that made my chest feel too small. On Friday nights, if I got home before 9, we would sit on the porch with takeout and talk about the future. A real house, a yard, maybe a dog, maybe kids, if the timing ever stopped running ahead of us. She would rest her bare feet on my lap and ask about my day, and I would tell her stories from the site, leaving out the dangerous parts because I did not want worry to live in her face. She would tell me about difficult clients and rich women who complained about nothing, and I would laugh because Ashley had a way of turning irritation into theater. Those were the years I trusted the most. Not perfect years, real ones. We argued about bills, about my hours, about her spending more than we planned. But every argument ended with one of us crossing the room. That mattered. I thought it meant the frame was strong. When I got promoted to site supervisor, I took her to a steakhouse near the Scioto River, the kind of place where the waiter described the butter like it had a college degree. Ashley wore a blue dress and looked at me like I had become proof of her good judgment. She posted a photo of us that night with the caption, "Proud of my man." I looked at that photo later in the truck and smiled like an idiot under the parking lot lights. A man remembers when he is admired. He builds entire years around it. The promotion changed our life slowly, then all at once. Better pay, better insurance, a mortgage approval, a white house in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus with maple trees along the street, and a garage big enough for my tools. I replaced the back deck myself over 3 weekends because Ashley wanted space for summer dinners. I painted the kitchen twice because the first gray looked too cold. I installed shelves in her closet, hung lights over the patio, fixed the mailbox after a snowplow clipped it, and never once thought of any of it as sacrifice. That was marriage to me. You put your strength where the home needs it. Ashley changed too, but back then I called it confidence. Her clothes got sharper. Her friends got louder. Her taste got more expensive. She started talking about branding, status, networking, the importance of being seen in the right rooms. I listened because I loved her, and love can make a man mistake distance for ambition. At company cookouts, she would squeeze my arm when executives walked by. At dinners, she would mention my projects before I did. My work became part of her introduction. "This is Michael. He supervises major builds downtown." I liked hearing it. I did not notice how rarely she asked whether I was tired. A crack does not announce itself. It starts behind paint. The first time I really felt it, was one winter night when I came home after a 14-hour shift with mud on my boots and pain in my lower back. Ashley was in the kitchen scrolling through her phone, a glass of white wine beside her. I kissed her cheek. She turned just enough to receive it, not enough to return it. I told her a worker had nearly been hurt because a supplier sent the wrong hardware. She did not look up. "But you handled it, right?" she said. "Not are you okay? Not that sounds scary. Just you handled it, right?" I remember standing there with my lunch cooler still in my hand, realizing she had gotten used to me being the kind of man who absorbed impact without making noise. Maybe I trained her to see me that way. Maybe I trained everyone. The strong one. The steady one. The man who could carry anything. Years later, in that hospital bed, I would understand the danger of being useful too long. Some people confuse your strength with a service. They do not notice the person underneath until the service stops. Looking back, Ashley did not leave me the night she brought those papers. She had been leaving in small, polished steps for years. The accident only gave her permission to say the quiet part out loud. The first week after surgery taught me that humiliation does not always arrive with shouting. Sometimes, it wears a visitor badge and speaks in a low voice outside your hospital door. Ashley came back on the 4th day, not with flowers or a change of clothes, but with a tablet, a folder, and the stiff posture of someone attending an appointment she wanted to finish quickly. I had just completed my first assisted stand with Dr. Bennett, which meant 2 nurses, a walker, and 12 seconds of feeling like my bones were arguing with gravity. Sweat had soaked through the back of my gown. My hands were shaking from the effort. I was still trying to catch my breath when Ashley stepped in and looked at me the way people look at damaged furniture on a curb. Not pity, not grief. Calculation. "Can we talk?" she asked. Dr. Bennett glanced at me, and I nodded because pride is a stubborn thing, even when it is sitting in a hospital recliner with a blanket over its knees. Once we were alone, Ashley pulled the chair closer but did not sit in it. She placed the folder on the tray, beside a cup of water and a packet of crackers I had not touched. "My attorney says we should keep things clean," she said. Clean. That word almost made me smile. There was nothing clean about a marriage ending between pain medication and discharge paperwork. She started listing practical concerns like she was reading from a grocery receipt. The house, the truck, the joint account, the medical bills, the insurance deductible, the possibility that I would need a ramp installed if I came home. Every sentence had the same hidden center. Cost. Not pain. Not fear. Cost. I watched her mouth form numbers and realized she had already converted my recovery into a spreadsheet. When I asked if she had spoken to my doctor about what I needed, she sighed. "Michael, I am not qualified to be a nurse." "I did not ask you to be a nurse," I said. "I asked if you cared what happens when I leave here." Her face tightened, and for a second I saw the anger underneath the polish. "That is not fair." There it was. The sentence people use when fairness finally turns its head toward them. I looked past her, through the window, at the parking garage across the street. Rainwater streaked the concrete walls. Cars came and went. The world kept moving with an ease that felt insulting. Ashley followed my gaze, then checked her phone. A small gesture. Quick. Almost nothing. But I saw the name on the screen before she tilted it away. Travis Cole. I knew the name because Ashley had mentioned him twice before the accident. A fitness studio owner. A client. A friend of a friend. One of those men who existed in conversation as a harmless detail until he did not. He had helped her with a charity event. He knew people downtown. He was good for networking. Back then, I had nodded and trusted her, because trust is easier than suspicion when you are tired. In that hospital room, with my leg locked in steel and my marriage lying open on paper, his name looked less like a detail and more like a door she had already walked through. "Is that who is helping you think about your future?" I asked. Ashley went still. Not guilty enough to confess. Not innocent enough to laugh. "Do not do that," she said. "Do not make this ugly." I looked at the folder, the tablet, her dry eyes. "I did not make this ugly." She slipped the phone into her purse. "Travis has nothing to do with this." The lie was calm. Practiced. Maybe she had learned from me how useful calm could be. Maybe we had both been studying each other for years without knowing it. She pushed the folder toward me and explained that she wanted to sell my truck before payments and insurance became another unnecessary burden. My truck. The black Ford F-150 I had driven through snowstorms, job sites, midnight grocery runs, and every hard season of our marriage. I had taught her to reverse it in an empty Walmart parking lot when we were 28, both of us laughing because she kept overcorrecting. Now she spoke about it like a broken appliance taking up space. "You cannot drive it anyway," she said. The words landed softly. That was her gift. She could make cruelty sound like common sense. I felt my hand close around the blanket. My leg throbbed in time with the monitor. For one dangerous second, I wanted to tell her about every mile that truck had carried us through. I wanted to remind her of the Christmas tree tied to its roof, the paint cans in its bed, the night we sat in it outside the emergency vet after our old neighbor's dog got hit, and she cried into my jacket. But memory is wasted on someone already rewriting the story. So I said, "Do not sell it." She gave a short laugh, not amused, just tired of pretending I had authority. "Michael, we have to be realistic." Realistic. Another clean word. Another white sheet over something dead. She left 20 minutes later after asking me to sign a temporary financial separation agreement. I did not sign. When the door closed behind her, I turned my head toward the window and saw her cross the parking lot below. She moved fast, coat pulled tight against the wind. A dark SUV pulled up near the curb. The driver got out and opened the passenger door. Even from the fourth floor, I could tell he was tall, broad, dressed in the kind of fitted jacket men wear when they want the world to notice the body underneath. Ashley looked back once at the hospital entrance, not up at my window. Then she got in. The SUV eased into traffic, red taillights fading under the gray Ohio sky. I sat there with the unsigned papers on my lap and understood something with a clarity that felt almost peaceful. She was not afraid of being alone. She was afraid of being tied to a man who needed time to stand back up. That afternoon, Dr. Bennett returned and found me staring at the walker by the wall. Ready to try again? She asked. My body said no. My pride said not yet. But the image of that SUV burned behind my eyes, and Ashley's voice kept circling the room. You cannot drive it anyway. I gripped the arms of the recliner and pushed myself forward. Pain flashed white at the edges of my vision, but I stayed quiet. Dr. Bennett stepped close, steady hands ready, but not touching until I needed it. Slow, she said. Weight through your arms. Breathe. I rose an inch, then two. The brace pulled. My ribs protested. Sweat broke across my forehead. For 5 seconds, I was not standing so much as negotiating with gravity. Then 7 seconds. Then 10. My knees trembled. My hands locked around the walker. The room narrowed to breath. Metal, floor. Dr. Bennett counted softly. I made it to 15 before sitting back down hard, exhausted and shaking. It was not victory the way movies show it. No music. No applause. Just a man in a hospital gown, pale under fluorescent lights, trying not to pass out. But for the first time since the accident, I felt something under the pain. Not hope exactly. Hope was too soft a word. This was harder. Heavier. A steel pin driven into concrete. Ashley had looked at my broken body and seen an ending. I looked at the same body and saw work to do. The day they moved me from the hospital to the rehabilitation center, Columbus was covered in a thin layer of late winter gray, the kind that makes every parking lot look tired. Daniel drove behind the transport van with a duffel bag of my clothes, my laptop, and the stubborn loyalty Ashley had thrown away like an old receipt. The rehab facility sat near Westerville, a low brick building with automatic doors, trimmed hedges, and windows that reflected a sky with no mercy in it. Inside, everything smelled like floor polish, coffee, and effort. That was the first thing I noticed. Effort had a smell. Rubber mats, clean towels, warm plastic from exercise machines. The quiet breath of people learning how to live inside bodies that had changed without asking permission. My room had a narrow bed, a small dresser, a chair by the window, and a whiteboard where someone wrote Michael Turner, Fall Risk, Assisted Mobility. Fall Risk. 2 words that would have made the old me laugh. I used to walk steel decks 30 feet above concrete, read blueprints in high wind, and climb temporary stairs with a radio clipped to my belt. Now a stranger wrote Fall Risk beside my name in blue marker. I stared at it until Daniel stepped in front of the board. Do not let a whiteboard define you, he said. I wanted to answer with something tough, something that sounded like the man he remembered. But I was exhausted from the ride, from the pain, from the paperwork, from pretending every new limitation did not feel like another room locking behind me. So I just nodded. Ashley did not come that day. She sent one text asking where I wanted the rest of my clothes dropped off, as if I were a tenant. She was clearing out after a lease ended. 2 hours later, Daniel brought in 3 cardboard boxes from the house. Work shirts, old jeans, a framed photo from our trip to Lake Erie that she must not have wanted, my shaving kit, my boots. The boots were the worst. Brown leather, scuffed at the toes, still holding the shape of a life I could not step back into. I ran my hand over them and felt something inside me fold quietly. Daniel saw it. He did not speak. Good friends know when silence is the only decent tool left. That first night in rehab, I learned that pain gets louder when the room gets quiet. In the hospital, machines talked for me. Nurses came and went. There was always a cart rattling somewhere, always a voice in the hall. At rehab, the lights dimmed at 9, and the building settled into small human sounds. A cough through the wall, a walker tapping tile, a television murmuring behind a closed door. I lay awake with my leg elevated, staring at the ceiling, feeling every inch between who I had been and who I was supposed to become. At 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. For one stupid second, I thought it was Ashley. It was not. It was an automatic alert from our bank. A withdrawal had posted from the joint checking account for $1,000. Then another alert. Transfer complete. Savings account. $12,000. My mouth went dry. I opened the app with fingers that did not feel steady. The balances had dropped like someone had opened a drain. I called Ashley. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. Then a message appeared. I am protecting myself until the divorce is final. Please do not make this harder. Protecting herself. I looked around the rehab room, at the metal rail on the bed, the walker folded near the wall, the plastic pitcher of water I could not reach without planning the movement first. She had emptied our savings from a man who needed help getting to the bathroom, and called it protection. The old me would have argued. The old me would have tried to explain fairness, history, marriage, vows. That night, the new me took a screenshot. Then another. Then another. I saved them in the folder named Deadweight. Paper trail. Beats emotion. I had learned that from job sites. If it is not documented, someone will pretend it never happened. By morning, Dr. Bennett found me already dressed in sweatpants and a gray t-shirt, sitting on the edge of the bed with my hands gripping the mattress. She raised an eyebrow. "You look angry." "I am focused," I said. She studied me for a second, then nodded like she accepted the translation. Therapy started with things that would have embarrassed me if I had enough energy left for embarrassment. Moving my foot 2 inches, tightening a muscle, standing between parallel bars while Dr. Bennett counted. The first time my left leg took weight, a bright cold pain shot through me and my arms locked so hard my shoulders shook. I wanted to sit. I wanted to curse. I wanted to be back on a job site where pain meant a sore back and not a full negotiation with gravity. Dr. Bennett stood in front of me, calm as a courthouse. "Do not fight the whole mountain," she said. "Fight the next inch." So I fought the inch. Then the next one. Then the next. Days became a schedule. Breakfast at 7. Therapy at 8:30. Ice packs at 10. Insurance calls before lunch. More therapy at 2. Legal calls when my voice was steady enough to sound like a man and not a wound. Daniel connected me with an attorney named Frank Caldwell, who listened more than he talked. I sent him the email, the bank screenshots, the unsigned financial agreement, and every message Ashley had sent since the accident. Caldwell called me after reviewing it all and said, "Michael, stop discussing feelings with her. From now on, facts only." It was the cleanest advice I had heard in weeks. Facts only. The fact was Ashley had left. The fact was she had taken money. The fact was she had called me weight after years of leaning on my strength. The fact was my body was damaged, not finished. By the end of the second week, I could stand for 43 seconds. I know because Dr. Bennett timed it, and because I wrote it down in a notebook Daniel brought me from a gas station. On the cover was a bald eagle and the words American Roads. It looked ridiculous, but it became my ledger. 43 seconds. Then 58. Then 1 minute and 12. I wrote everything down. Pain level. Steps. Calls. Costs. Wins so small nobody else would clap for them. One afternoon, while I was icing my leg, Daniel walked in with my laptop under his arm and a look I knew from job sites. The look he got when a problem had a door hidden inside it. "There is consulting work you can do from here," he said. "Safety reports. Incident reviews. Remote documentation. You still know more about construction risk than half the guys walking around with clipboards." I almost told him no. Pride rose first. Then fear. Then Ashley's voice, sharp and clean. "You cannot drive it anyway." I opened the laptop. The screen lit my face in the dim room. My hands hovered over the keyboard. For the first time since the accident, work did not look like something behind me. It looked like a railing in front of me. I took a breath and said, "Show me the files." The files Daniel showed me were not glamorous. Safety reports never are. They are photographs of cracked brackets, inspection logs with missing signatures, weather notes, equipment records, and witness statements written by tired men who would rather be anywhere else. But to me, sitting in that rehabilitation room with an ice pack strapped to my leg and a cheap notebook open beside the laptop, those files looked like a road. Not a highway. Not yet. More like a gravel service road behind a job site, rough and narrow, but leading somewhere. The first case involved a warehouse expansion outside Cincinnati where a subcontractor claimed the fall protection plan had been approved, while the general contractor insisted the crew ignored procedure. Daniel warned me it was probably a mess. He was right. It was a mess. But messes were familiar. Construction is controlled chaos wearing a hard hat. I read every line twice. I zoomed into photos until the pixels broke apart. I compared timestamps, delivery records, training sheets, and weather reports. Somewhere around 1 in the morning, while the building slept and my leg throbbed under the blanket, I found it. A lift inspection had been signed 2 hours before the lift was even delivered to the site. 1 impossible signature. 1 clean lie hiding in plain sight. I sat back in the dark and felt my pulse change. Not excitement exactly. Recognition. The kind a mechanic feels when an engine finally tells him where the knock is coming from. The next morning, I sent Daniel a 6-page review with marked exhibits and a plain explanation of the timeline problem. He called 15 minutes later. "Mike," he said, and then stopped. Daniel was not a dramatic man. He measured praise like lumber, only cutting what he needed. "This is better than what we get from firms charging $300 an hour." I looked down at my leg, locked in a brace, my foot swollen inside a sock Dr. Bennett had helped me put on. "Then maybe they should charge less?" I said. He laughed, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed too. It hurt my ribs, but I let it happen. That laugh mattered. It was not joy. It was proof sound could still come out of me without breaking. Work became my second therapy. Dr. Bennett handled the body. The files handled the man. In the morning, I fought the parallel bars. In the afternoon, I fought bad documentation. At night, I studied new software, updated safety standards, deposition formats, insurance language, and risk assessment templates. My world had shrunk to a room, a walker, a laptop, and a body that negotiated every movement. But my mind started walking long before my leg did. Ashley kept sending practical messages, all polished and empty. "Did you sign the vehicle release? My attorney needs your response. Please be reasonable." Reasonable. She loved that word. It made selfishness sound mature. I answered only with facts, just like Caldwell told me. "No. Pending legal review. Direct all financial matters to counsel." Each message felt like setting a brick. Small. Square. Solid. One evening, she called instead of texting. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. Then she called again. And again. The old instinct rose in me. The husband instinct. The trained reflex to answer before she got upset. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I looked at the notebook beside my bed. 2 minutes standing. 6 assisted steps. First paid review completed. I turned. The phone face down. A man cannot rebuild if he keeps walking back into the demolition. By the 4th week, Dr. Bennett moved me from standing practice to short distance walking with a walker. 10 feet became 15. 15 became 22. The therapy room had a strip of blue tape on the floor, and I hated that tape more than I had hated anything in my life. It looked so harmless. A simple line. But every inch demanded payment. My palms burned against the walker grips. Sweat ran down my temples. My left leg shook like a bridge in high wind. Dr. Bennett walked beside me, not cheering, not pitying, just counting in that steady voice. 14 feet. 15. Breathe. 16. At 22 feet, I stopped, arms locked, breath caught in my throat. The old Michael would have crossed that room in 6 seconds while carrying a toolbox. The new Michael needed 3 people watching and a chair waiting behind him. Shame rose hot in my chest. Dr. Bennett saw it before I could hide it. "Do not compare bodies," she said. "Compare effort." I wanted to argue. Instead, I took one more step. 23 feet. That night, I wrote it down. 23 feet. Then below it, I wrote, "Not dead." The divorce moved forward while I learned to move forward too. Caldwell filed responses, challenged the account transfers, flagged the email, and made sure every conversation went through the proper channels. Ashley did not like that. People who count on your emotion become offended when you give them procedure. She sent one long message near midnight, saying I was being cold, saying she never meant to hurt me, saying I was making everything harder than it needed to be. I read it once. Then I saved it to the folder and did not answer. Words had become weather. Documentation was shelter. Around the same time, Daniel brought me a second consulting file, then a third. Small jobs. Remote reviews. Nothing that would make headlines. But the checks cleared. The first one was for $850. I held that check in my hand for a full minute before depositing it through the banking app. $850 would not pay for the surgery. It would not save the house. It would not erase the look on Ashley's face when she watched me struggle to stand. But it was money earned from a bed she thought had become my finish line. It was proof. A man does not need to be whole to be useful. He needs a place to put what he knows. By the end of the second month, I could walk the length of the therapy room with a walker and sit down without help. Dr. Bennett marked it in my chart like it was routine, but I saw the corner of her mouth lift. "You are stubborn," she said. "I have been called worse." She looked at me for a second, and I knew she was thinking of the word she had never asked me about. The word in the folder. The word that had become fuel. "Good," she said. "Stubborn will get you to a cane." Spring arrived slowly outside the rehab windows. Snow melted into dirty water along the sidewalks. Bare trees started showing small green buds, careful and almost suspicious. I understood them. Growth after winter does not look confident at first. It looks fragile, uncertain, easy to miss unless you are watching closely. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel wheeled me outside for air, though I hated the chair and told him so the entire way. He parked me near a patch of sun by the entrance. Cars pulled through the circle drive. Families came and went with flowers, balloons, grocery bags, clean laundry. I watched a man help his wife into the passenger seat of a minivan, one hand steady at her elbow, patient as stone. No audience. No grand speech. Just care. Quiet, ordinary care. I looked away because some things hurt more when they are simple. Daniel pretended not to notice. After a while, he handed me a folded printout. I talked to a guy who knows a guy, he said. There is a regional safety conference in Cleveland this fall. They need speakers with field experience. I unfolded the paper. Construction risk and recovery. Lessons from real incidents. I almost handed it back. I can barely walk to the vending machine. Daniel looked at me, steady. Then roll in. Talk anyway. The wind moved across the parking lot, carrying the smell of wet pavement and cut grass. I stared at the printout until the words stopped looking impossible. Once, I had built my life with my hands. Maybe now I would build with scars, records, and the truth men only learn after the beam comes down. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my notebook. Not because I was ready. Ready was overrated. I had learned that from Dr. Bennett. I kept it because for the first time, the future did not feel like a locked door. It felt like a job site before sunrise. Empty. Cold. Waiting for someone stubborn enough to begin. By September, I could walk with a cane, slowly, unevenly, but under my own command. The first time I crossed the rehabilitation center lobby without a walker, nobody applauded. A receptionist answered the phone. A man in a wheelchair argued with his insurance company near the vending machines. Dr. Bennett stood by the front desk with her arms folded, watching like a foreman inspecting a beam that had finally taken weight. I reached the automatic doors, turned around, and saw her nod once. That was all. One nod. It meant more than a standing ovation. 2 weeks later, Daniel drove me to Cleveland for the safety conference in his pickup because I still did not trust my left leg for long drives, and because my Ford was still tied up in legal nonsense Ashley had tried to create. The city was gray and windy when we arrived, Lake Erie pushing cold air between the buildings. I wore a navy suit that did not fit the way it used to. My left shoe had a small brace hidden under the pant leg. The cane was black, plain, and heavier in my mind than in my hand. I hated needing it. I also knew it had earned its place. The conference hotel smelled like coffee, carpet cleaner, and men pretending they were not checking emails during every conversation. Contractors, safety directors, insurance people, attorneys, all wearing badges on lanyards and shaking hands like the world could be controlled with firm grips and clean charts. I almost turned around in the lobby. For a second, I saw myself through their eyes. The limp, the cane, the slower steps. A man who used to run job sites now moving like every tile had to be negotiated with. Then Daniel leaned close and said, "You found the impossible signature." I looked at him. What? That first case. You found what everybody else missed. Walk in. So I did. My session was in a smaller room on the second floor, not the ballroom, not the main stage. 28 chairs. A projector. A pitcher of water sweating on a side table. I had expected 12 people and polite boredom. By the time I started, there were people standing along the back wall. Word had traveled that the guy speaking had been under the steel, not just writing about it afterward. That kind of truth makes professionals curious. My hands were steady when I opened my laptop. That surprised me. My leg was not. I planted the cane beside the podium and began with the sentence I had practiced in the rehab room at midnight. Every safety failure has a biography. The room went quiet in a way I knew. Not pity. Attention. I talked about paperwork that lies, inspections that become rituals instead of safeguards, supervisors who confuse speed with leadership, and companies that only discover concern after a claim number exists. I did not describe the accident for sympathy. I described the conditions that allowed it. The missed maintenance notes. The rushed schedule. The small decisions that looked harmless until they stood on top of each other. Men in the front row stopped looking at their phones. A woman from an insurance firm began taking notes. An attorney raised his hand and asked whether injured field personnel could become effective independent reviewers. I looked down at my cane, then back at him. Sometimes the person who paid the price reads the room better than the person who billed the hour. Nobody laughed. They wrote it down. Afterward, 3 people asked for my card. I did not have one. Daniel, because Daniel thought ahead when I was busy surviving, pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. White cards. Black letters. Michael Turner, Construction Safety Consultant. Turner's Safety Group. I stared at them for a second too long. You made these? I asked. He shrugged. Somebody had to name it. I held that card between my fingers and felt something shift into place. Not healing. Healing is too neat a word. This was alignment. A load finally resting where it belonged. The first contract came from a mid-sized contractor outside Akron. The second from an insurance carrier in Indianapolis. The third from a law firm that needed someone who could explain job site reality without drowning a jury in jargon. I worked from a rented apartment near Columbus with a folding desk, 1 lamp, and my old boots sitting in the corner like witnesses. I hired a part-time administrative assistant named Claire, then a retired inspector named Owen. Then Daniel came aboard officially after telling me he was tired of watching managers ignore problems until they became invoices. Turner's Safety Group did not explode overnight. It grew like good concrete cures, slowly, under pressure, gaining strength while nobody impatient understands the weight. A year after the accident, the divorce was final. Ashley got less than she wanted and more than she deserved, which is how family court often feels when both sides leave with clean papers and dirty memories. Caldwell recovered part of the money she had transferred. The judge did not appreciate the timing. Neither did my attorney. I kept the house only long enough to sell it on my terms. I did not want to sleep inside rooms where love had learned to calculate. I bought a smaller place near Hoover Reservoir, with a ramp I chose myself and a back porch facing water. The first morning there, I stood with my cane in one hand and coffee in the other, watching sunlight move across the lake. No one asked when I would be useful again. No one sighed at the cost of me. The quiet did not accuse. It welcomed. 2 years became 3. My limp remained, though less obvious on good days. Pain still visited when the weather changed, moving into my leg like an old tenant with a key. But my company grew. We taught firms how to prevent the kind of failures they use to explain away. We reviewed incident reports before lawyers turned them into weapons. We trained supervisors to stop treating safety meetings like interruptions. I spoke in Cleveland again, then Chicago, then Nashville. At one event, a young foreman waited until the room cleared and told me he had stopped a lift after my talk because something in the inspection log felt wrong. He found a hydraulic issue before anyone got hurt. He shook my hand with both of his and said, "You saved my crew a bad day." I sat in my hotel room that night, tie loosened, cane against the chair, and let those words settle. Not applause, not revenge. Purpose. Purpose is heavier than praise, but it carries better. The local business journal ran a profile that winter. The injured engineer changing construction safety across Ohio. They sent a photographer to the office. Claire made everyone clean their desks. Daniel complained about wearing a jacket. I stood near the conference table with one hand resting lightly on the back of a chair, because standing still too long still cost me. The article mentioned the accident, the recovery, the company, the speaking engagements, the clients expanding across 3 states. It did not mention Ashley. I like that. Some people are part of the fire, not the rebuild. The article went online on a Tuesday morning. By lunch, my phone buzzed with messages from old colleagues, clients, even my father, who wrote, "Saw the article. Your mother would have printed 10 copies." I sat with that one for a while. Then, at 4:17 in the afternoon, a message appeared from a number I had deleted but still recognized. Ashley. 7 words. I saw the article. Can we talk? I looked at the screen, and the office around me seemed to go very still. Rain tapped against the windows, light and steady, the same kind of rain that had followed her into my hospital room years earlier. My left leg ached under the desk. The folder named Deadweight was still saved in 3 places. I did not answer. Not because I was afraid. Not because I was angry. Because some doors do not deserve the dignity of being slammed. They stay closed because you finally understand what your piece is worth. 3 months after the article came out, Turner Safety Group received a request from a corporate office in Columbus asking for an independent review of a workplace injury claim tied to one of their regional locations. Claire flagged it as urgent because the company wanted a preliminary assessment within 10 business days. and the retainer was large enough to make even Daniel whistle when he saw the email. The company was not a construction firm. It was a growing salon and wellness chain with locations across Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. Polished brand, clean website, smiling employees in matching black shirts. The kind of business that sold calm while its back office ran on pressure. Their internal safety program was thin, their documentation was worse, and one of their employees had been hurt after a storage platform failed during inventory. No graphic details. No headlines. Just the familiar smell of negligence hiding under professional language. I read the first batch of documents at my desk, while rain moved across the reservoir outside my office window. There were missing inspection records, vague training notes, and a manager who had signed off on equipment checks she clearly had not performed. The name of the regional operations manager appeared on page 12. Ashley Turner. I sat back slowly. The office around me narrowed to the hum of the printer and the dull ache in my left leg. For a moment, 3 years vanished. I was back in the hospital, staring at her beige coat, listening to her explain my value in terms of cost. Then the moment passed. Not because it did not hurt, because hurt was no longer in charge. I forwarded the file to Daniel and asked him to review the structural notes. He called 5 minutes later. Did you see the name? Yes. Want me to decline it? I looked at the rain, the gray water, the cane leaning against my desk within reach, but not in my hand. Once, I would have thought revenge meant taking the job and making her feel small. Another time, I would have thought healing meant refusing to be anywhere near her. But I had built a company on facts, not feelings. The facts were simple. An employee deserved the truth. A company had hired us. A report needed to be written clean. No, I said. We take it. Standard process. The meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday in a glass conference room on the 11th floor of a downtown office building, less than 2 miles from the hospital where my old life had ended. I arrived early with Daniel and Owen, wearing a charcoal suit, a white shirt, and the plain black cane I no longer hated. The receptionist offered coffee. I declined. My hands were steady. That mattered. The conference room had a long table, city views, and a wall screen showing the company logo in soft gold letters. Executives filtered in with tablets and nervous smiles. Then the door opened again, and Ashley walked in carrying a leather portfolio against her chest like a shield. She stopped so suddenly the man behind her nearly stepped into her back. For 1 second, all the polish fell away. Her face went pale. Her eyes moved from my face to the cane, then to the Turner Safety Group folder in front of me. She understood the room before anyone explained it. I stood because I was leading the review, and because I could. Slowly, without hurry, I rose to my full height. 6'1", not on paper this time. In the room, in front of her, the cane touched the floor once. A clean sound. Ashley's mouth parted, but no words came. The chief financial officer, a narrow man named Paul Mercer, looked between us with polite confusion. You two know each other? He asked. Ashley blinked. I saved her from answering, not out of kindness, not exactly, but because professionalism is a sharper blade when you do not swing it. We were married, I said. The divorce has been final for 3 years. It will not affect the scope of this review. The room went quiet. Corporate quiet. The kind that pretends not to hear while remembering every syllable. Paul adjusted his tie. Are we comfortable proceeding? I looked at Ashley. She looked trapped inside the life she had chosen. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner, the confidence still there but stretched tight at the edges. I wondered if Travis Cole had stayed. I wondered for half a second, then stopped. Some questions are old rooms. You do not have to enter them. I am comfortable, I said. Ashley swallowed. Yes, she said softly. We can proceed. I opened the folder. Good. Let us keep this professional. The words landed in the center of the table and stayed there. For the next 90 minutes, I walked them through the preliminary findings. Missing training acknowledgments. Inconsistent storage. Procedures. A platform rating nobody had verified. Supervisors signing logs after the fact. Ashley did not interrupt. She took notes with a silver pen, but her hand was not steady. When I asked who had approved the regional safety checklist, she said her own name like it cost her something. Daniel kept his eyes on the documents. Owen explained the equipment issue with the calm patience of a man who had spent 30 years watching companies learn lessons late. I did not raise my voice once. I did not look for chances to embarrass her. I did not need to. The truth filled the room without help. Near the end, Paul asked the question everyone had been circling. Can this be fixed before it becomes a larger exposure? I folded my hands on the table. Yes, but not with cosmetic changes. You need real training, corrected logs, equipment verification, and someone with authority to stop operations when procedure is not followed. Paul looked relieved. Ashley looked at the table. She knew. She had once left a man because recovery looked expensive. Now her job might depend on paying for prevention before damage got worse. Life has a strange sense of symmetry. After the meeting, the executives shook my hand. Ashley waited by the window while the room emptied. Daniel gave me a look that asked if I wanted backup. I shook my head. He left with Owen, closing the door behind him. For a few seconds, only the two of us remained, with Columbus spread below the glass and afternoon light turning the building silver. Ashley hugged the portfolio to her chest. Michael, she said. My name sounded different in her mouth now. Smaller. Careful. I did not know they hired your firm. I know. She looked at the cane again, then away. You look good. There were 1,000 answers to that. I chose the cleanest one. I worked hard. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. Maybe she had learned control too late. I saw the article. I wanted to call sooner. You did call. You did not answer. That was my answer. The silence after that was not empty. It was crowded with everything she could not undo. She took a breath. Travis left 2 years ago. There it was. The name dropped like a coin into a deep well. I felt nothing sharp, only a distant tiredness. That is not part of the review, I said. She flinched, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. She nodded slowly, pressing her lips together. No, I guess it is not. I gathered my folder and stood. My leg ached from the long meeting, but I did not rush. At the door, she said. I was scared back then. I paused with my hand on the handle. Fear. Another clean word people use to repaint abandonment. I turned enough to look at her. So was I. Then I opened the door and walked out first. The final report took 9 business days to complete. Not because it was difficult, but because I refused to rush anything connected to Ashley. Every photograph, every checklist, every missing signature, every corrective action had to be clean enough that no one could call it personal. Claire formatted the exhibits. Owen verified the equipment notes. Daniel reviewed the recommendations twice, then walked into my office and placed the folder on my desk like a man setting down a tool after a long day. It is solid, he said. No extra weight. I looked at the words on the cover page. Turner Safety Group Independent Review. 3 years earlier, a different folder had sat beside my hospital bed, carrying the end of my marriage in cold legal language. This one carried something else. Competence. Distance. Control. The company accepted every recommendation. Ashley kept her position, barely, but only under a corrective oversight plan that put real authority above her. That was not revenge. That was accountability. Revenge would have tried to ruin her. Accountability simply made her stand in front of the truth without makeup. 2 weeks later, on a Friday evening, I left the office later than usual. The sky had opened over Columbus, rain falling hard enough to turn the parking lot lights into blurred yellow halos. My leg always knew rain before the forecast did. It ached deep, old metal and old memory talking under the skin. I was halfway to my truck when I saw Ashley standing near the covered walkway. Beige coat pulled tight around her, hair damp at the edges. Same color coat. Different woman. Or maybe the same woman with fewer places to hide. Daniel had already left. Claire was gone. The building behind me was mostly dark. Ashley stepped forward, careful, like approaching a door she had once slammed and now had no right to knock on. Michael, she said. I stopped, one hand resting on the cane, rain ticking against the pavement between us. This is not the place, I said. I know. I just needed 5 minutes. I almost walked away. My body wanted the truck. My mind wanted home. But the part of me that had carried that word for years wanted to see whether hearing her say sorry would change its weight. So I gave her silence. She took it as permission. I was wrong, she said, and the words came out faster after that, like she was afraid courage had an expiration date. I was selfish. I was scared. I saw the hospital bills, the recovery, the uncertainty, and I panicked. Travis made everything sound simple. He said I deserved a life that was not built around someone else's limitations. I believed him because it was easier than being decent. Her voice cracked on the last word. Decent. A small word. A heavy one. She wiped at her cheek, though the rain made it hard to tell what was weather and what was regret. He left when things got hard too. I guess that is what people like us do when we do not know how to love properly. I watched her under the parking lot light and felt the strange calm of a man standing outside a house that used to be his, seeing through the windows without wanting the keys back. People like us? I asked. She looked down. People like me. That was the first honest correction I had heard from her in years. She opened her purse and pulled out something folded in plastic to protect it from the rain. For 1 second, my chest tightened, remembering another envelope, another bedside, another version of her hand offering paper like a verdict. I wrote you a letter, she said. Everything I should have said. Everything I should not have done. I did not take it. Her hand stayed extended between us, trembling slightly. I do not need a letter to know what happened. I need you to know I am sorry. I know. She blinked. That answer did not satisfy the story. She had rehearsed. Regret wants a scene. Forgiveness, anger, collapse, something it can respond to. Peace gives it nowhere to stand. Is there any part of you, she asked carefully, that ever thinks about what we had? I looked past her to the rain sliding down the office windows, each drop catching light before disappearing. What we had. The rental in Dayton. Pizza on the floor. The porch I rebuilt. The kitchen painted twice. Her feet in my lap on Friday nights. The blue dress at the steakhouse. The proud smile that once felt like sunlight. I remembered all of it. Healing had not erased the good years. It had simply stopped them from defending the final ones. Yes, I said. I think about it. Hope moved across her face, quick and dangerous. I let it die gently. But memory is not a contract. Her shoulders dropped. The rain filled the silence. I set my briefcase on the hood of the truck, opened it, and took out a single sheet of paper. Not because I had planned this exact moment, but because some documents stay with a man until he no longer needs to carry them. It was the email she had sent her attorney years ago, the one I had saved in the folder named Deadweight. The sentence was highlighted in yellow, still ugly, still clear. Given Michael's current condition, I do not want to be financially tied to Deadweight. I held it out. This time, she took the paper. Her face changed as she read it. Not shock. She remembered writing it. That was worse. Her lips parted, but no defense came. I carried that longer than I should have, I said. Not because of the divorce. Not because you left. People leave. Marriages fail. Fear makes cowards out of better people than you. She flinched, but I kept my voice even. I carried it because for a while, I believed you had named me correctly. Ashley looked up, tears bright now, rain running along her jaw. Michael, I did not mean. You meant it then. The sentence stopped her. Not loud. Not cruel. Just level. A steel beam set into place. And I believe you regret it now. Both can be true. She folded the paper against her chest, as if it burned. Can you forgive me? I looked at the cane in my hand, at the truck behind me, at the office where my name was on the glass, and my people trusted my judgment. I thought of Dr. Bennett counting feet in a rehab room. Daniel handing me business cards I had not asked for. My first $850 check. The young foreman who found the hydraulic issue before his crew paid the price. The porch at my house near Hoover Reservoir, where morning came quiet and did not demand usefulness as rent. I already did, I said. That is why I am not angry enough to hate you anymore. Her breath caught. Then maybe, no one word. Smaller than revenge. Stronger than hope. Forgiveness is not an invitation back. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she finally looked like someone seeing me clearly. Not the provider. Not the patient. Not the problem. Just the man she had abandoned and the man who had survived being abandoned. I took the paper back from her hand, folded it once, then twice. There was a trash can near the walkway, black plastic shining with rain. I dropped the paper inside. No ceremony. No speech. Just a small sound, almost lost under the weather. Ashley stared at the trash can like she had watched a door close. Maybe she had. I opened the truck door and placed my cane inside first, then myself, slowly, carefully, the way I had learned to do without shame. Before I shut the door, she said, I really am sorry. I nodded. I hope you become someone who knows what to do with that. Then I closed the door. The engine turned over, steady and familiar. As I pulled out of the lot, Ashley remained under the yellow light, smaller in the mirror with every yard. I did not feel triumphant. Triumph is loud, and this was quiet. I felt free. The accident took my stride for a while. Ashley took the version of marriage I thought I understood. But neither of them took the man underneath. They only stripped away everything that had been mistaken for him. These days, I still walk slower when it rains. My leg still aches. Some mornings, I still see the hospital ceiling before I see the room I am in. But then coffee brews in my own kitchen, sunlight reaches across my own floor, and the reservoir waits beyond the porch. Calm as a promise nobody has to make out loud. I was weight, yes. Bone, history, grief, effort, scar, memory. But I was never deadweight. I was foundation. And once I learned that, I stopped begging anyone to stand on me who had not earned the ground.